Hi, this is Matt with the Intergalactic Herald. Welcome to my Star Atlas Week in Review podcast. This is podcast number 112. Any articles or videos mentioned can be found on my website at intergalacticherald.com. Look for news recap number 160. So just real quick overview of things to talk about. Actually, really, there's just one big thing, which is an interview with Michael Wagner, but briefly talk about Star Atlas Brew and some content creator content. Anyways, before I get to that, just a couple things that I'm working on Star Atlas. I do have a Star Atlas proposal within the Star Atlas DAO for an in-person community media platform. It's still under review, but hopefully we'll continue moving that forward with different reviews and hopefully get to a voting stage. So if you're definitely interested in any feedback, obviously trying to always make the proposal better. So if you go to the Star Atlas Discord, look for the DAO section, look for Draft Pips, PIP. You'll find one with my name and in-person community meetup platform. Additionally, I do have two Star Atlas projects. One is a Star Atlas merch store at intergalacticgear.com, open for business. Doesn't have a lot of things yet. Been working on a lot of things in Star Atlas, plus, business, personal, family, everything else that needs to go, mowing the lawn. Anyways, but if you go to intergalacticgear.com, again, I have some mugs, hoping to put out some wall art soon, but I do have a merch survey there, so I'd love to get any feedback on merch that you may be interested in. Also, I am slowly trying to develop a Star Atlas community for Star Atlas gamers who are not member of guilds, would like something slightly different than the Star Atlas. I shouldn't say slightly different, radically different than the Star Atlas Discord. It's a community platform that'll be born based on threaded discussions, and you can sign up for topics to follow and then get email alerts when things come. So basically, you don't have to always check and wonder. It's not kind of based on chat, more about discussions. So if you go to intergalacticcoalition.com, do have an interest survey there. If sounds like something you'd be interested in chatting with other Star Atlas gamers, I hope this could be a place you would find interesting. So again, intergalacticcoalition.com. So as I kind of alluded to, there was really one major piece of content that came out this past week, and I'll kind of talk about that in a second, but did want to call out the other content creators that put out regular content. Beyond the Horizon continues to put out his Zero to Hero series, which is a great thing looking at how to play Sage and other features. Metaverse Explorer came out with kind of a review, an update of Star Atlas things, and the Aphia Guild, I believe, who authored by Funcracker, put out their weekly Star Atlas newsletter. So that was really great. The Star Atlas community team did their weekly Atlas Brew. This one was all focused on AI, and they brought on a team member who is I think leading up the kind of AI efforts within the games. So if you're kind of curious where things are related to AI, a little bit about the latest announcement, but just kind of thoughts on AI in Star Atlas in general. That was a great Atlas Brew. And that was pretty much it on the content, kind of traditional. But the real big one, and I'm going to kind of morph my two sections together, kind of a review of the content from the last week and kind of my thoughts on the state of Star Atlas, that one of the Star Atlas community members, Virtual, who owns a Star Atlas Thailand, did a very long, very extensive, I think it was almost 2+ hours, interview with the CEO of Star Atlas, Michael Wagner. They called it part 2. Apparently he did a video years ago. That was part 1. I'm actually not sure I ever listened to that one, but regardless, it's in the past, so things have moved on. But it was a great interview. So what I'm going to kind of do is I'll go through kind of the things that I highlighted from it, and then kind of also get my thoughts at the same time. So this will be kind of a melding the two sections together. But in general, it was a great interview. I think I really like the style in the sense that the first half, it was kind of for public consumption and, kind of where things are. And then the last half was more for the community. He also did ask for community questions, and so some of those got asked and answered. So I think, again, it was a great format. I guess my only aside in it has nothing to do with the interview. But again, I'd love this content to be regularly produced by Star Atlas. The Star Atlas Community Brew, or the Atlas Brew for the community is great. They bring a lot of people on there. The Enterprise or Econ team has their monthly meeting. Jose does semi-regularly lore things. I just wish we get, again, they used to be called town halls and they were for announcements, but there was lots of great information here, and I think it would have, this on a regular basis produced by the Star Atlas team, I think would be an incredible thing for them to do. But nevertheless, we get moving forward. So there was lots of things in this interview, many things I did not highlight only because either I'd heard it before or something I knew. So I was really trying to take notes on things that were new or new to me. So again, I apologize if this is a slanted review of that, but you're not listening to this podcast to get everything. That's not what I do. I give you my thoughts. So anyways, so one was very interesting, talking about crafting. And currently right now, of course, crafting is where we take our crew and we turn them into other materials, or occasionally or not occasionally, but there's a few times we can redeem it for ships. But Michael Wagner kind of alluded to that crafting will be greatly expanded in the future. And a couple of the things that he highlighted that I hadn't really thought about, but again, probably because it makes sense. One was ship components. Now, we have heard of the desire to be able to craft our own ships, truly do it, and I think with blueprints, I think they're called. But anyways, so that wasn't as much. But I think what I took away from it was, one, that the idea of ship components may be in the grand scheme of things, sooner rather than later. So maybe we won't be able to craft ships, but since we can buy ships, we may be able to put the components on there through crafting. So that was actually kind of very interesting. The other one was, and I wasn't 100% sure just from my notes, but we can do crafting of claim stakes or related to claim stakes. So I'm not really sure, but again, the idea that crafting and claim stakes could kind of have a part. And again, I'm not really sure if this is all related to the C4 beta, or not beta, but what do you call it when you make up a word for something? Upcoming thing they're working on. Codename. That's what I was looking for. Codename. So, because claim stakes is one of the C's. So, I'm not sure if, again, that's part of it. But again, it was interesting to hear, and it kind of shows how they can still provide ongoing improvements to the game that are yet incremental. The other thing that was really good on the interviews, he did mention the desire for player growth. And if you've listened to my podcast before, again, lots of things I think relate to, well, we've got to get new players in, but we don't have any products. So that was good that theme came up a few times in the interview, that, yeah, definitely Star Atlas is focused on player growth. The other thing that was interesting was we currently have the fleet rentals, which is, again, the ability for people to take their ships, put them into a fleet, and then rent them out. But Michael Wagner introduced a side goal, and I'm not sure if it's a fleet rental or he meant more that we could use the free rental mechanism for this. But he talked about the idea of, quote, security services. And the way he framed it was, let's say we have, or I think what he said is, well, the game's going to be available 24/7. There's nothing we can do to change that because that's just how it works. But you may not be playing, so you may rent security services that would protect your things. Now, I'm not sure what the things were, but just the concept that, yeah, it's a persistent environment, 24/7. Most normal people can't stay online the whole time, but there'd be a mechanism using the fleet rental concept or technology to rent a security service to protect your things when you're not actively playing. And I don't know why that was just like, oh yeah, duh, but also, oh, that's kind of cool. So yeah, I don't know. Again, it was an interesting concept. I just hadn't heard myself. Now again, maybe it's been said before, but new to me. And I didn't actually put this in my news recap. I guess I just realized I forgot, but there was an announcement looking for, I know I didn't put it in. It was an announcement looking for playtesters. So that's cool, but doesn't fit my kind of news recap. But it was, again, to test the free-to-play version of Sage, which I don't know if I've talked much about it, but again, the economic forums talked a little bit about it. It's this idea that they'll create a parallel version of Sage not off the blockchain, but not on the main blockchain, so the economic incentives won't be real, but it's a way people could start learning. And then I think they said something like time will be sped up, so things will go faster. So again, I don't usually talk too much about speculation until we get much closer to releases of things, just because lots can change. But anyways, this free-to-play version of Sage has been coming up more and more. Now they're actually doing playtesters. So, again, it feels like it's moving to an actual release and a product. But one thing Michael Wagner mentioned that I had not heard before was that this version could have, quote, a mobile app on Android or Apple. And I have been disappointed that the mobile app previously announced with the Move to Earn model had to be shelved, only because found out later the algorithm to prevent cheating on that was just too much or not enough effort, or too much effort for, anyways, it couldn't be done or with reasonable price or whatever. Anyways, but this idea of a free to play, which again, there's no cheating because there's no economic incentive, but it would have a mobile app. And so I think, to me, the idea that some part of Star Atlas can be a true mobile app is very, very intriguing. So it's interesting. That was, again, first time I've heard, hey, there is potential for a mobile app and it might be aligned with this free to play product/game. So another question and answer part related to marketing, which of course, as someone who has my own marketing agency, I obviously like this. But what was really interesting, and I think kind of the first time I've heard it in recent times, is kind of that as far as marketing, they definitely do have different target audiences or target markets they're going after. One of them is the traditional gamer, and again, a lot of that lines with the current play style that they're developing for the UE5, Unreal Engine 5 showroom type of thing. But he also did mention other kind of markets or target audiences. One, and again, I might have not heard this or took good notes, but kind of an economic extractor, and that makes a lot of sense. You come in just to make money, and I think that kind of was given an analogy to like the Axie Infinity, but I'm not really sure. And then he mentioned also the idea of investors might come in, and this goes back to they buy in because they see this as an investment and then use the passive things like the fleet rentals to basically just by default rent out their resources so they have no interest in the game or anything like that. And there might have been one or two other kind of things. Again, I was multitasking, having lunch, so I was, paying attention, but not really. But anyways, it was, again, very interesting to start hearing some more of those things. And what was really tied all this part of the interview up around the marketing was that Michael Eisner said something, and at first it took me a while to sink in, but then it no, this makes perfect sense, that the product, and I want to say products, but the product that Star Atlas has created is actually the core marketing driver. So they want to create interesting, engaging, appealing products, and he didn't say word of mouth, but that will be what drives the marketing, not the reverse. And in that context, I totally agree. If you don't have a product market fit, you don't have a good product, you don't price it well, and all those things, it still comes back to the thing, product/service. But in this case, they have a products. That's how your marketing should be driven around those things. So totally agreed. I think that's a great philosophy and a great perspective. So it was nice to hear that kind of specifically called out. Another topic came up was the Atlas Locker. What really stood out to me was this concept, and I had not thought about it, was that the Atlas Locker actually encourages savings. So I was like, savings, huh? Well, I'll get benefits. But the savings part, if I understand kind of crypto theory correctly, and maybe it's just monetary theory, not sure, economic theory, is that if Atlas, the token, is basically locked up and taken out of the market, that's a downward, or I don't know, makes it less, I'm not really sure. But anyways, that it basically provides a reason why you would save, and saving is good. So I guess how that works in economic theory, I'm not really sure, but I think it makes sense. So, but again, that was the first time I'd heard the word savings kind of mentioned. So another topic that came up was, and again, this may be related to the marketing parts, but that they really know Star Atlas needs to kind of make this process of getting into UE5, especially if they're targeting more traditional gamers. And so it was the first time I'd heard the idea that to get the UE5 key, you don't have to go into Discord anymore, but pretty soon there'll be something where you basically can go to the website, put your email in, hence they capture the email, and out pops a game key. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, they get the email, so then now they can market to people. They can keep them updated. And, of course, people give out their email because they want the game key, so it's a perfect incentive in marketing, online marketing speak. This would be a lead magnet, but, again, it allows you for email marketing, keeping people in the loop, things that, unfortunately, in my opinion, the blockchain and the wallets, that's great for anonymity and all the benefits of being on the blockchain, but you have no ability to communicate with them, where, of course, with an email, you do. So definitely, I think that's an awesome upcoming strategy, and wholly think, yeah, it's great. There was a little bit of talk about the C4 update to Sage, but one thing that came up about combat was something called battle lines, and I totally wasn't following that, but I think I have missed some other conversations about different ways that how Combat will handle. But again, something that, I don't know. Just battle lines was what I wrote down on my notes. So, and then a couple more things. One, there was a little more talk about claim stakes. And this is the first time I heard that basically claim stakes could have tons of customizations, I guess, within the claim stake. So I'm not sure if they then customize it so it mines more or battery or whatever. But as I was starting to listen to this, I was going back to something that I like to do or play a lot, which was real-time strategy games. And many of the processes within a real-time strategy is you build something. So I'll just pick on Age of Empires. So you build a barracks, or you build a stable, or you build some other thing. And then you can improve that so it mines faster or grows food faster. So it really sounds like these claim stakes, and again, I'm not sure if the stake gets customized or the things within it, or, again, it's just a stake. But I kind of wrote to myself, are these factories? And whether they are or not really isn't the point. The idea that this could become an entire thing. And that's where the two people on the call were mentioning that, this could be an entire thing in and of itself. And I'm like, cool. Because again, I think having these multiple places. So again, we got ships and we got mining, we got scanning, we got transport, and then we've had these idea of claim stakes, but they don't do much. And so the fact that maybe in this C4 version 2 that some of this stuff might come online to have flexibility. So definitely very intriguing, and going to start paying more attention to that because I don't know. I'm not sure if I feel more like that's what I'm interested in, but I think I mentioned in some of my earlier podcasts, it's that kind of permanency factor that it's like, well, I can put my claim down, my stake. I don't know. I kind of go back to gold rushes and Yukon. Wait, wasn't it up in the Yukon? I don't know. Gold rushes happen in a lot of places, but I don't know why I always think of Canadian Yukon. But anyways, you go up there, you put your stake down, and then you try to mine for gold, and it's your place. So I don't know. Ships are cool. If I had a bigger one, maybe I'd think of it as a self-contained home, but putting down a stake on a planet feels, I don't know, just that's kind of the cool gameplay I would really love to get more into. So, and then finally, or second to the final, there was a good question from the community that Michael Wagner did answer, which was, how's the runway looking? Excuse me. How is the runway for Star Atlas looking? And I realized that question hadn't come up much, or definitely not recently. And it was really great. It was really insightful, and I'm really glad he shared it because as much as I wasn't thinking about it, it obviously is in the background because all this stuff only matters if Star Atlas can keep paying its employees. So Michael Wagner says, he's not too worried about runway because they've had a lot of previous sales, and he was mentioning different ships that came out. One thing he didn't mention was crew, but I assume that was part of the calculation. So it sounded like everything was good, but he did mention that recently, like in the last 3 months, things have gotten a little more volatile. But if you look at the bigger picture, the whole world economy's gotten more volatile. So that's not at all shocking. I mean, not to go into too much, but my business, I too am dependent upon my clients and things like that. So anyways, but I totally get that for the last 3 months. So, but that was, again, good and obviously something they're watching. He did also mention that they're definitely looking at other revenue streams, and that's sort of where these products come. And again, I didn't realize the free to play, because of course you see free has a potential revenue stream. And so they're obviously thinking about that. Goes back to that. Product is the marketing driver. And then the last thing he mentioned, and I guess this goes that it needs to be said, but it's obviously obvious, but I guess it's good that it came up and kind of was the summary, which is that the long-term goal is they need more users. And so again, it just felt like, everything lines up. This all makes sense. So so I think that was good. And then the very last thing, and this is one of those that was kind of, I realized I forgot to write it down because it went so quickly, but there was something mentioned about some sort of July announcement. You could tell Michael Wagner really wanted to say something, and then he knew he couldn't, but he said it was really big. And so, again, I know there's so much in the last years about teasing and things like that, but that one, I don't know, it just felt different. So again, who knows? But we'll see what this July thinks. So anyway, so overall, again, to summarize, it was a great interview. Really appreciate that Virtual took his time, but also that it was a great interview, great set of questions, really thought-provoking, got a lot of, not even that it was a lot of teasing and alpha and new stuff. It was just a perfect kind of quarterly update that, again, I would just wish the team would do on a regular basis, because I think it goes a long way to really presenting things without really having to put any expectations. So anyways, so that's pretty much it. Last section on my journey, I'll just do some quick updates. Again, I've stopped my Sage automation play because I've been trying to do research and had some personal things come up on the last few weekends, so I've been busy with other things, so just don't have that free time to do it. But I finally did start my spreadsheet to look at the local markets. Again, ultimate goal is to get them on the X. Starting goal is to get a whole bunch of resources to craft said ship. And the first big one, or I just picked the big one. I figured if I can figure out how to do the largest volume one, then that's a good place to start. So it was carbon. So where I stopped was I was struggling with trying to figure out if it makes more economic sense to mine the carbon. Well, let me back up. I decided that mining is an action I will perform with my fleet. So I don't know. I didn't really test that theory, but anyways, then I don't know. I just made that assumption. Or I made that fact. I'm going to mine. But transport of all the carbon back to the Central Space Station I was wondering about, because now we have local markets. So I wanted to create a spreadsheet where I could figure out how much the cost of selling the carbon at the local market, probably at a inflated price, that's an assumption, and turning into Atlas, and then take the Atlas and buy the carbon at the Central Space Station, which I would hypothesis will be cheaper, supply and demand, things like that. So I started doing a spreadsheet for that. But to do that calculation, I realized first I needed to figure out how much fuel I would need. And then actually I realized I need to figure out how much hydrogen I need for the fuel, because I don't think my claim stakes will keep up with my demand. But again, we'll cross that bridge. Also, I realized as a more complication, you can't mine without food and fuel. So I realized the secondary calculation might be how much does it cost to transport said fuel and ammo, Nope, back up. Ammo and food with fuel to transport back and forth. So mining does take things. But again, it's the nested problem. You work on one problem and then you realize the second problem. But again, that's the whole point of this, is to actually put some numbers together to try to determine which method of, many things. So I started that, but again, I needed to figure out the transportation costs, even though that would develop into something else. But the point I wanted to make was I was really struggling with trying to figure out the distance, because if you just try to move your ship, it tells you how much fuel you're going to use. But I'm like, okay, that's great, but I don't want to, why can't this be done mathematically? And I was like, I don't know. So I kept trying to figure things out, and it was an angle, so it wasn't a true square unit over. I think they're called AUs, Atlas units. I don't know. I remember having a discussion with someone. Anyway, so I was just like, how's this done? And I was just kind of staring at the problem for a long time and moving my cursor around. And I was like, well, the other starbase is like 10 units over, and then it's 2 down. I was like, well, how do you figure that out? And then I figured it out, and figuring it out was that thing like, if you're of a certain age, you've heard this before, which is, you didn't learn anything in school that you could apply in real life. Well, guess what? You can. And what I realized was it was a right triangle. Now, for people who don't remember geometry, it's called the Pythagorean theorem. You know two sides of a right triangle, and you can figure out the length of the hypotenuse, the longest side. So lo and behold, was it square root of a squared plus b squared? Square rooted is c squared, which is the distance. And of course, spreadsheets can do calculations. So I put that in there, and lo and behold, and then times it by the fuel consumption of that route, and the numbers with rounding matched. And I was like, oh my word, geometry does have applications. Now, again, this isn't quote unquote your job, but yeah, it does matter. So it made me realize that, I got to be much more remembering that basically a lot of things, especially moving in 2D space, again, this isn't three-dimensional space yet, this is 2D space, could be solved by geometry. Now, maybe all the people that have done the automation tools already knew all this, but I don't know. It was cool figuring it out, and it was cool applying geometry. So, yes, what you learn in what you learn in grade school might actually apply, or I guess it was high school, but whatever, what you learn in school could actually have real life implications. So there you go. Anyway, so that was there. Obviously, you need to keep working that spreadsheet to add in more things and kind of get to the point where I finally can compare one action versus another action. But again, strangely, I don't know, this is a little more intriguing and fun than clicking a button and moving things. So, to each his own. But anyways, so that's pretty much it. Thanks for listening. Again, wrapping it up. Again, totally open to having some podcast guests. So again, if you're a member of the community, just want to talk about the week in review, love to. If you're a content creator or a StartOS builder, love to hear more and interview you to, learn more about what you're doing and help you promote it. And obviously, definitely open to any StartOS team members that have some free time. Love to do beginner type topics on anything related to Star Atlas. So not going to set you up for any requests for secrets or anything like that. Totally interested in just the basics and some of the fundamentals. So, and then lastly, again, if you're interested in any Star Atlas merch, I do have a few things. Mugs, working on some wall art. Please go to intergalacticgear.com. And if you're interested in hanging out with a community of StartOS gamers who aren't members of guilds, who want more of a discussion format than a chat format, please check out intergalacticcoalition.com. Have an interest survey. Love to get a few people together. Do want to point out that this would be a paid membership, and that's to help offset the cost of this software. Unfortunately, unlike Discord, which is free, this software does have a monthly fee, but it allows all these other features, and so small trade-off to help support the software costs. Anyways, again, that was intergalacticcoalition.com. Anyways, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, if you're looking for a great thing, do check out that interview. I barely did a dent, I think, to the 2-hour summary there. Otherwise, this is Matt with Intergalactic Herald. Have a great week ahead.